Call the order of the Pleasant Grove City Council work session at 4:30 PM this day on July the 16th, 2019, and welcome everybody, especially you in the far back. So it's, we're glad that you're here this evening.
Okay. Okay.
So we will start with,
Well, we have a couple of employees to introduce. If we can start with that, and we'll have Chief Roberts take care of that.
We need to share the pointer. First,
you got to push on, push go.
There we go. Mayor and council, we just haven't had the opportunity because of scheduling and moving and such to introduce the two newest employees we have. So without further ado, the newest employee we had is Keisha Young, Keisha Estrada. Estrada now, right?
Yes, now.
She got married, okay. And Mike Stowe, and I'll let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about them. You're first. You were hired first. Come on up.
You got,
You don't get off that easy.
Okay, it's strange. I'm Keisha Estrada. I started being a police officer April 2017 with Orem City. I'm a mom of 3 kids, just recently married, so that's me.
Military.
And military, 12 years military. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks for coming to our city.
Of course, proud to be here.
And thank you for your service. Thank you.
ma'am.
I'm glad that we could steal you from Orem. Thank you for coming to Pleasant Grove.
Poor Orem.
Well, I'm grateful to be here, so thank you.
so where do you call home? I mean, where did you grow up?
Here in Pleasant Grove,
Oh, okay.
Very nice.
and I live in Pleasant
Oh,
Grove.
that's awesome.
Well, that's a couple of positive checks here. Okay,
Scoring the points.
okay, yep. Welcome.
My name is Mike Stowe. I spent 7 years in Heber as an officer up there. My dad was an officer for 34 years, so having the background. Came down here recently, and I'm happy to be here. I've met a couple of the city employees already and a few councilmen, and it's a great place to work, and I couldn't be happier.
Good.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Yep.
Glad to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Any other questions for anything?
Thank you, thank you.
Just be careful out there, okay?
I like the pink handcuffs. That's a great addition, the pink
Like-
handcuffs.
Pink.
Mike, I think you might need,
Okay.
Does this get us staffed, fully staffed within the police department? Great.
oh,
Very good.
For today.
For today.
I took our wings off.
You guys are free to go.
We have to be nice.
All right.
Thank you.
Are we back?
Well, we have one more employee,
Okay.
our new intern, Nate Reed. Nate, if you want to come
Oh,
up.
yeah.
Same who designed it.
So Nate is currently at UVU, right? And wants to get a degree in public administration, a master's degree. So part of that is getting some experience in city government, and he talked to me a little while ago, and so we've set him up. He's working for us this summer, and working mostly with Kyler, a little bit with Denise, and then some of the other staff on HR, finance types of things. We're making sure he gets a nice breadth of what we do as a city so that he can have it on his resume and also prepare him to, I don't know, do you want to be a city manager one day? Or, okay, maybe after the internship, he might change his mind.
Somewhere in Wyoming to start, right?
Actually, tonight will be the night where he kind of questions.
I've invited him to council meeting. I said, this is where it all happens. This is where the action happens. So, because he's been with us for a couple months, but he's going to start attending so he can get a flavor of what a city council meeting is. So with that, I'll let Nate introduce himself.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, so like Scott said, I'm at UVU right now studying finance, but I found out about public administration like about a year ago, and I've just been super interested in it. And even though Kyler keeps trying, he hasn't deterred me yet, so it's been really good so far these last few months. So thanks for having me here tonight, you guys.
welcome.
Thank you. And where do you come from?
I come from Layton.
Okay.
Yeah, so I lived there, grew up there, and then I've been in Provo for the last 5 years or so doing school and stuff. So
Okay.
Well, we're glad to
Glad
have
you're
a
here.
Wolverine here to this evening.
Wolverine.
Thank you.
We don't have many Wolverines around here.
Right.
Hey, I'm a Wolverine.
Wolverine.
Yeah. I mean, the animal, no, but
Okay.
graduate, yes, of UVU.
Okay, let's talk our CARE tax logo, and I'll let Eric introduce Danny here.
So Danny is here, so I have to, partially my fault, come on up, Danny, sorry, with Scott, he's gonna help. I totally forgot that tonight was the night we were gonna do that, so we met quickly last night to work over some stuff, but we're gonna kind of go over some stuff on the fly here really quick and get your blessing so we can move forward.
While Danny's getting ready, I'm just wondering what we as a council could do to make sure that you stay in our city for a very, very long time.
I need a sidewalk
Oh, okay.
around my block.
I didn't know you were going to actually come up with something.
And a new road.
She has a new road,
She has a new road. She just wants side.
Not only that, she came up with it really fast.
like she's been thinking about it.
Yep, there we go. All right, so, well, this is kind of where we left things. I sent some different ideas to Eric, and he got feedback, I guess, and so we kind of came up with this.
And then Scott, I think you showed us American Forks, I think they said it was, this project was funded. Oh.
I
but
did
this-
send it to everybody.
They have on theirs, it says, and some of our projects are partially funded and fully funded, so we weren't sure what to say because American Forks says this project was funded by.
Well, let me kind of clarify. So American Fork has two different signs. One of them is like this.
Uh-huh.
So it doesn't necessarily say this project was funded by. In a sense, it says American Fork Park. And then underneath it says what park stands for, the PARC. So they have that sign, and then they have a separate sign that says, for instance, on their pickleball courts, it actually says, these pickleball courts are partially funded by the park program.
So we would just add those certain things to ones that,
But it has that logo.
yeah, it
So
has the
it-
main logo and
Yeah.
underneath it, if it was partially, then we put that. And-
Yeah, so if we can decide on what the main logo looks like, then we can customize all signs off of what the main logo looks like.
Okay,
So that's, hopefully we can decide that tonight.
okay, I'm staying back now and it's up to
Okay,
you guys.
well, like I said, this is kind of, I met with Eric last night and got some feedback, kind of where we,
I like the
Left
blue and green.
things.
Can you go to the next page over?
yeah.
I kind of
So-
like the blue and green, because that incorporates the Pleasant Grove green with like this Viking blue.
This right here? Yeah, so it's kind of just whatever you guys want. American Fork has these different colors just to kind of represent the different,
Kind of stands for each
Yeah,
each
just to
thing.
kind of
Kinda
show what it-
diversity.
Actually, like that top left,
how that varies. And then, if this is our basic logo, then
you can add that.
we can add things depending on the application. So it was funded by, partially funded by, and then I just threw this on here to show if you're going to be printing in black and white, we like to make a black and white logo also, because it prints better than trying to just print color in grayscale. So,
So they're all basically the same?
Yeah, and I mean, if
Just
there's
different
ever-
color and/or different format.
yeah, and if there's ever a reason where you want it all one color, that's pretty easy to do too. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you, Diana. I like top left.
If you're happy with it, it's ready to go. If you want me to change something, you
We
can.
have a couple votes, we have 3 votes, we just need Lynn to tie break.
Top left.
You good?
Mayor? Mayor, what do you think?
I'm good with that top.
Okay, okay, wow,
Okay.
look at that.
All right, that was easy.
So can you send that to me?
I sure can.
Just email that to me, and then I guess whatever we need in order to, I don't know, I'm not good enough to know the file types and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
I'll
in
send you
order-
everything that you need,
Okay.
and then if you ever need it customized, just
Okay,
shoot me an email and I'll,
It's a packet.
yeah,
yeah.
put a little package together for you.
Do we have a style guide? Do we have a brand guide at all?
We
as
do
a
for
city?
the City of Trees,
Okay,
but we don't have, I mean,
so this will
obviously.
just slot in under that?
Yeah, essentially, I mean, and part of it is if we're gonna be changing that anyway regarding our logo and what have you, we can maybe do that all at the same time.
I just think for a vendor, it would be very important to have, like the PMS colors and the.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll send you a logo package that has, you know, all the colors and fonts and things.
That would be
If
great.
you ever need that for any other thing, so. Okay, is that all?
And because that was so easy, I feel like we need to make it difficult a little bit.
No, you don't, we're good. The difficult part
Usually
came
on a
before.
design, it's not that easy.
That's right.
Well done.
Okay, all right, you're welcome.
And, yeah,
Thanks
thank
for having
you.
me.
Okay, with that, we will now move to item number 2. Our favorite discussion, high-density housing. I might need some, Pepsi, extra Pepsi? Yep, Pepsi, do you want to suck on my bottle?
I might need to on this one.
Okay, we would want to circle back a little bit on requests regarding densities in the city from developers, because we are starting to get inundated with requests, and we want to make sure that staff is on the same page with city council as we give responses. So right now, our protocol is if somebody comes in and they have a piece of property and they ask for, in essence, density. Well, let me take a step back. Right now, the highest density we allow is 12 units an acre, and it's in the the mixed housing zone. We have one piece of property, it's right here. Let me put that up there a little bit so we're not blinded, Mike. Okay, this is the Proctor Farm. That is zone mixed housing. That is the only property left that's not developed that's mixed housing. Is that correct? It's the actual mixed housing zone.
Let me see if I can get a laser. Don't have a laser.
We have another pointer.
Okay, that is not developed. Well, we have this one right here and that one right there as well.
Those are zone mixed housing?
Correct.
Okay, so we have a couple other smaller pieces.
How big is that property you just showed us? That's not very big over there, that one that looks like bricks.
These two here?
Yeah, that's not, how many acres is that?
This one, I'm gonna put it like this. This one right here is a little shy of 5 acres.
Okay.
That one's 3 something.
All right.
So yeah, that's what the sizes are.
So the intent, go ahead.
The entire red or just that parcel?
Just this parcel, so right here.
Okay. Got
Just
it.
the Proctor Farm, so not including the Smith property here. So the intent was, when we initially did this zone, was to create, because we were getting a lot of requests for apartments and whatnot. And so the council said, look, we're willing to go up to 12 units an acre. And also, one of the requirements is they need to, if it's over 5 acres, it needs to have 3 different types of density housing. So townhomes, maybe apartments, or, I can't remember.
Single families.
Single family, or whatever, in order to make sure that it's just not a block of townhomes or a block of apartments. So that was the intent. So when we have developers approach us and they ask for what they can do with their property, and if they have an idea that they want to do density, we let them know about the mixed housing zone, so that if there is a piece of property that currently is not zoned that, they have an opportunity to ask for a rezone for mixed housing at 12 units an acre. And most of the developers tell us as staff, that's not dense enough. We need more density. And so generally when that happens, we tell them, you can run through the process. So the process is we would now need to create a new zone that will accommodate your project. So if you're looking for 24 units an acre, then we'll need to write a zone that's 24 units an acre. Now, when we tell a developer that, that's usually not their thing. They usually are not writing code, but we do put it back on them that if they really want to do this project, they're the ones that need to come up with that. What they do, and they ask me and Daniel, okay, hey, what's the council? What are they thinking? Are they doing density or not? Do we have a chance to get it passed? And we're like, hey, we have discussions, but I don't know the individual council members on any given day where they're going to be with how they feel about a particular project and a particular density. So it's a difficult question for us to answer to them. but they want a feel from the council so that they know whether to start investing money and going through this process, because it does cost money to do the code amendment change, and it does cost money to go through the planning commission and ultimately to the city council, and they want to spend as least amount as money possible before they get a for sure that this is something they can do. So they expressed frustration to Daniel and to myself that when we tell them, hey, we don't have a zone that can accommodate you, they start getting frustrated that we're not willing to work with them, in air quotes. So we'll tell them, hey, write up your zone, we'll run you through planning commission, we'll run you through the city council, and then you'll know whether you have a project or not. They just don't want to go that far because that costs money to do that. But we let them know. We've had 2 projects in the last few years that have gotten more density than 12 units an acre, the Myler project and the McKay Christensen project, and we said, but they brought retail with them. So the city council is willing to negotiate density if you can bring retail with you. That's what these last 2 projects, that's what we tell developers, that's if you're gonna have a chance at density, this is what you need to do. The projects that are now, we're being approached on, for the most part, are not bringing retail with them. They're looking for a straight up apartments or townhomes or whatever, and they're just telling us 12 units an acre is not enough for them to, in essence, make money, to make their project worth it. So what I wanted to do is circle back with the city council, make sure that I have a general understanding as to how you feel and the process moving forward. And I just want to talk about a couple specific areas that we've really had some pretty in-depth discussions with developers. So this property right here, this is the Smith's grocery store. This is Holy Grill restaurant. That's McDonald's. Yeah. That's the new development going in that the Osmonds are doing. And this is a piece of property here that, and this is the question I try to answer in my mind, is what is the best use of that piece of property?
So Scott,
Yeah.
This one is hard, right? Because it's surrounded by retail, and in the way that's situated back in behind, I really don't see how we're going to put retail back in there.
Yeah, and so that's the argument that the developer makes, and one that I don't necessarily disagree with is what's this property going to be used for? That's not going to be single-family homes.
Can I say something, boss?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
okay?
no, jump in.
So let's just keep in mind that these are 2 different pieces of property right here. This is the one that, and 2 different developers have approaches, right? We're working right now on amending the code, not on density, but on other limitations with the applicant right here, who is developing this land at 12 units per acre, okay? So this one, it's already, we're working on it, but I'm pretty sure that whoever the developer is will be happy to see or excited to see if that we can have a hike of density over there. Now, these are, again, 2 different type of properties
Yeah,
with
and
2 different approaches. Sorry, boss.
To Daniel's point, this developer can make 12 units an acre work. This developer's telling us he needs 24 units because he wants to do apartments. This is going to be townhomes. And so, but meanwhile, they're kind of on us saying, hey, staff, you need to push this through. You need to get with the council and see what we can do. And we have realtors involved that are calling us on a constant basis, pushing us, trying to politically move what they would like to see happen. And they keep asking, well, what does the council think? What does the council think? I said, well, they haven't seen this. I mean, this is not something that, I said, generally speaking, and we used to do this years ago, we'd have a developer come in, they'd have a concept, and before we ran them through planning commission, before we ran them through the process, we'd bring them into council. As Sid and Diana probably remember this. And so we'd bring them in, and maybe Eric, we did this, and we would have them take your temperature on a project. And so they'd bring a project in with density, and it puts you guys in an awkward position, because now you're trying to give them a feel when we don't have any really details. We just have a concept plan. We don't know if they're going to meet parking requirements. We don't know if they're going to meet design requirements. All these things that really matter when it comes to the approval of a project. So when we discussed that with you, ultimately the council said, look, if somebody wants to do something that's outside of what's already in code, then they just need to run through the process. And so that's how we've been handling it. We're just finding some developers are frustrated with that process. And I think some of them eventually get back to you guys and they tell you staff's difficult to work with or that we're somehow holding up their progress. When we feel like as staff, we're just doing what the council has asked us to do. So whether we need density or not is really the council's decision and discussion. Because if the council wants to consider that some of these properties might need to be more dense than 12 units an acre, my recommendation is that we write a zone that is available. So that every time we don't have to go through this dance of, you create your own zone. I'd much prefer that we already have a zone outlined where we all have buy-in, that we're comfortable with this zone. It doesn't have to be applied. That's still your call whether that zone's, we don't have to put this zone on any piece of property until somebody asks for it. But that is one way so that when somebody approaches us and says, well, I need more than 12 units, we can say, well, there is this zone, it's 18 units or it's 24 units or whatever we feel comfortable with.
Scott, are
Yeah.
you talking like an overlay or just a separate zone that we could come in and rezone?
I don't know if the best would be an overlay or probably an actual zone. I think, because when you do an overlay, then the under zone rules apply. So, probably something along those lines. So that's one way to do it, is let's actually create a zone that is available for them and figure out what we're comfortable with as far as what that zone looks like. Or we can just say, okay, we're comfortable with 12 units an acre and that's as far as we're gonna go. And so if you, which means probably apartments are not gonna be part of the equation, but townhomes are probably on the table now if you wanna do 12 units an acre. So that's another direction that we can go. Or it can really be, hey, we're not interested in any of this at this point. Whatever the zone is what the zone is. And then we can always go back to, if you want to run through the process, we're willing to help you through the process, but a lot of it's going to be on you to figure out what requirements you want in order to make your project work. So I've kind of talked about a lot of things. Is there any questions?
I like the idea of coming up with some optional zones to have on hand because I think that's more developer friendly and showing that we're willing to, there is an option out there depending on their project and their concept. And so I do like the idea of that we come up with it because that isn't their forte. And then they're going to spend months and months coming up with a zone that may or may not get passed, and that's just not their thing. So I think if we take the initiative and do that and have some optional zones in different areas of the city, or maybe it's just, it applies to these high-density areas, I do like that option. I'm willing to go and look a little bit more. This is already surrounded by retail, whereas this isn't, and this has been blighted for years. Nothing's gonna come in there.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
willing to take a look and see what a concept is that a developer has, because that area really does need to be cleaned up. And I think it would help the retail, the frontage retail, if we got that, some quality housing in that area. Otherwise, I don't think anything's gonna come in because it already is fronted with retail. These, I'm not as interested, and if it's just straight apartments and no mixed use or no retail, absolutely not. I don't wanna go above the 12. I think the 12 has kept us at quality developments and also has allowed developers to think outside the box and come up with something that's gonna be more quality for our community. So I like where we've gone with the 12 units, but I do like the option of providing them another
Zone.
zone that is a possibility, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but then they're not spending months and months, and then different developers are coming back with different zones, and then we're all over the place. If we can create that and give them kind of a foundation to start, I'm always willing to look. We said we're open for business, but, well, when I say that, no, for this. If it's straight apartments and they want 24 to 32 units an acre, absolutely not
Yeah,
with no
yeah.
retail. I wouldn't,
Well,
that's
and
just not where we're
so
heading.
along those lines, when we receive these requests, so because I think we have somebody that's inquired about something right here, not on the frontage, but maybe set back a little bit. And theirs might be a mixed-use project. Daniel probably,
No, that's exactly the thing. So we just moved that one, but that one's supposed to go right there.
oh, did I move it? Sorry.
Yeah, you can just drag it and go back. So the other option and what developers said, it's like, okay, how about I do the commercial retail in the front, and then I go with some commercial, high density on the back, right? So-
And again, it depends on what he's determined high density, because again, if it's 32 units an acre,
So in the last week, this red, that one, all the ones that I put in red right there, those were requests done in the last 2 weeks, all of them. Right now, the market's hot, right? All of them. So the requests vary. From some people can do 12, where not residential is allowed, to some people requesting up to 50.
Up to what?
50, 50.
Wow, really? Okay.
Yes. So, because they're trying to see where we are at. And every developer comes with, even for the same property, sorry, I'm going to poke a hole on Chief Roberts. Every developer, when they approach, for example, the same property, they come with their own number. Some of them say, hey, I think I can make it work with 20. Some will be like, I can make it work with 12. Some are like, I need 30 to make it work. So I think that's why it's important for us to have a number. Now, it's, and I don't know, maybe the discussion is going to go there, is the proposal then to create a zone that we'll have right there, kind of like in the reserves, that we're going to apply, or a zone that is going to be right there that can be modified for different portions of the city?
How do we modify a zone to customize it to a project?
By amending it, by creating another zone.
So that we have a base zone, and then amending that base zone is way easier than creating a new zone every project.
but legally, is that okay, Tina?
Which,
That can get ugly.
No, I mean, I guess I'm confused about what the proposal is. The proposal to create optional zones?
In my mind, the proposal is to create one zone that would allow more density than 12 units.
It sounds like an amendable zone or on-the-fly zone. That's,
I
Yeah, but
mean-
how,
No,
Spot
no,
zoning.
sorry, that's
but
not
how
what
are
I
you
wrote.
going, how are you going to apply it to one piece of property and not another
Well, you
piece of property?
can't, have to be optional
So that's-
for all pieces of property in the city.
I think we have to have a conversation, not necessarily on changing zones, but specifically on high-density
want.
housing
Right.
in specific areas. Right?
And I think that is exactly right. I think that we need to figure out how we feel right now, because 5 years ago, we said 12 is the limit, and we actually cleaned up a lot of zones and said, no, these zones are specifically we're not going to allow it anymore. Also in this conversation, I want to know if because legislatively at the state level, we're also looking at affordable housing and how there are going to be some demands on cities, and I want to make sure that we're in line with what we need to be there. But I think the fact that we have looked at projects as they come in, I think we've been very open to the conversation. And I think we've been very deliberate in the zones and the uses of those zones. I like where we are right now. There are anything in that Grove area, I cannot see us changing that zone. The only other property that I'm willing to even have a conversation with about this is the Smiths on the east side.
This right here?
Yeah. So,
The west side.
no,
The east side.
the
East side
east- the
of
east one.
facing state?
Of Smith's Grocery Store, is that what you're saying?
So I think a standard that I've seen consistent with council is that if there's a part that's on frontage of a artery or a high-traffic road, we like commercial.
That's what we want retail.
So I'm treating the Smith's property area totally different than I am the Grove, totally different, flexible there, because I
Because it's
already
already
know
retail.
retail there.
Yeah.
And I-
So-
But right here, this is prime.
Yeah, I see that as being campuses, offices, the permitted uses that we have that are already listed in that zone.
I mean, it sounds like maybe what is Tina needs to be brought in and look at the legality of what can be done and maybe come back with a proposal that maybe we can do some optional zones.
So my suggestion was one zone, not
Right.
optional
But I
zones.
thought you said 18, 24.
I'm just saying, we decide what our number is.
I have a feeling that,
We
like
decide
Daniel,
what number we're
like
comfortable
Daniel
with
said,
as
though,
far as density.
you're gonna have one developer who says, to make this work, I've gotta have 22. And the next developer is gonna come and say, I've gotta have 30. I just
They all
don't know
say
how
that.
we,
Well, but this gets to the essence of, it doesn't matter what we set as a zone, a developer's gonna come in to us, and this happens all the time, and says, here's my
Yeah.
project. I need to shoehorn this into the zone in some manner. And so I need 22 units, or I need 26, or whatever, for me to get my project. Now, generally speaking, depending on what that is, with McKay Christensen, he had his number, Larry Myler had his number, and we sat down and negotiated that with him to say, okay, this is a number that we're comfortable with if you bring X amount of retail with you. But some of this is very, to your point, is very specific to the nature of the property.
Yeah.
This is completely different than this. And we get that as staff. I mean, we understand that this is not conducive to high-density housing. That's not something we would recommend. But we're looking at this one right now, and, you know, if the developer's asking for 24 to 30 units an acre, he wants to put apartments there. And we're looking at them like, man, we have not done that sort of density in years here, with the exception of the ones that brought retail with them. And they can't bring retail with them. There's not.
But look, you've got frontage on two, like, and I know it's a small frontage on State Street.
Yes, he does have frontage on State Street, and that property actually, I know because there's a Mexican restaurant right there that I
I
go
do
on
too.
Sundays.
I eat a
No,
lot
but
at.
that parking lot right in front of it belongs to that parcel right there. Now, something to keep in mind is that every developer comes with their own constraints, right? That guy right there is gonna say, I don't have as much frontage as I wish I had. The developer on State Street, on that one, is gonna say, hey, the train tracks are right in front of me, and it's difficult to access through there. The developer right here is saying this is too narrow to develop as a commercial one. So the developer right here says, hey, the front works, but the back is not. It's super hard to develop. So everyone comes with their own constraints. That's why I am there right with Scott, that we set up a number, because also and I'm glad we were dead on that, create one zone. Creating one zone, just to create one zone, it takes a sweet time, right? If you guys remember, as these two zones, they're completely different from each other, completely different. Each zone took us about 8 months to create for each of these guys, because they tailor it to how they wanted it, right? Having a number is gonna help us a lot, because based on that, we can pretty much, I don't wanna say the forbidden name, but we're gonna create kind of like if we create one zone bus, it will be kind of like a PUD type of a situation, which we're far away from that, right? But that kind of is what we're looking into it. Again, I think the number is gonna help us a lot. Or the idea that each zone, the creation of each zone, it takes its sweet time. In regards to, we gotta do research, we gotta find out exactly what's the best, we gotta look at the property, and it takes some time. And that's what the developers don't wanna wait that much time, but that's the nature of the beast, if I wanna say it that way.
Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
All right, I'll take it. So lift up the map just a little bit. Nope, oh, sorry, the other way. Yeah, the other way. So this is my feeling. We've talked about this. We know where we want to go with this. This is at 12 units, right?
Yeah, and they're asking for a code amendment to tweak the code to accommodate their project, and.
But it's just 12.
Yeah, so it'll be
right?
12 units.
Which is the perfect for the zone. This area right here is attached to retail and attached to state. I am disinclined to approve that type of a apartment complex on state when it's attached to retail. This is a little different, because while it is attached to retail right here, it's not next to state. It's kind of a funky piece of property. You're not gonna get anybody to go in there if it's on a commercial. That makes more sense. If they were to come to me and say, hey, we want 32 units an acre, I'd probably say no. right? My biggest, when people come talk to me, their number one is still that multi-unit housing. They don't want more density, especially west of state. That's hard on schools, it's hard on churches, it's hard on communities, hard on traffic. So this one I'm okay with at 12. This one I'm not okay with.
But Todd, explain why you're not.
But you need
Okay.
to go look at that
Yeah.
piece, and you'll say, oh, yeah, that's never going to be.
It's
You
it's
need to
bad.
look at it.
Well, it's right there next to Holy Grill and Los Compadres.
Yeah.
Right?
But nothing will go behind those.
Yeah, I mean, technically, you could maybe put a little bit of a strip mall there, but this, I don't see a retail use for this.
But are we willing, but if they could put 12 units an acre, I'm okay. Do what you want.
Yeah, and,
He wants 30.
They can't.
and that's kind of they can, they're just saying, we want apartments there instead of
Well,
townhomes.
but maybe 30 is too much and we compromise and we hear the concept. And maybe we just take it on an individual basis.
And that's, so in some ways, that's what we're trying to avoid a little bit, is that we're not bringing we're not customizing every single project to.
But if we give you the general idea that this area out there is right here, this is a no-go unless there's some sort of retail and it, you know, a certain amount, I mean, if we kind of give you the general direction, but there are some areas, and that's why maybe an individual basis is better, not for every single person that walks in the door, but this is completely different than this. And I would like to see this cleaned up and these retail spaces do better.
Yeah.
And I think that Roxbury coming in is cleaning that up, and, you know, I'd like to see it do better, so I think we'd be open-minded. But this right here, I mean, I can tell you absolutely not. So I don't know if we kind of give you a general direction, but I'd be willing, I mean, we can't be doing this with 10 developers every single time we meet, but
And that's the hard part of it, because, I mean, we can kind of set a threshold that we're comfortable with.
Okay.
But we'll be asked anyway as staff that, is there a way that we can increase the density or change the design guidelines or whatever to accommodate their project? And I think as staff, we generally handle these fairly well. It's just that we do irritate some developers here and there, because in some ways, we're telling them, no, we can't do your project.
And then we do, can I interrupt again, boss?
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sorry.
keep going.
And we do have a general idea, a general idea, that's called the general plan. So we do have a general plan. Maybe it's time to revise our general plan because, for example, again, and we're just, right now, we're focusing on this, but that's the same conversation I had with these guys this week and the property right here, right there. Anyway, but if we just focus on that one, we have a general idea, which is our general plan. And the general plan says that they're full commercial, or in this case, your general plan says half of this has to be commercial, and then the other one, half-acre lots. So we do have an idea on that. Now, do we want to revise the general plan also to go there, or just?
I'm good with the general plan because I think the general plan has allowed us to get to build up the Grove in a quality way. So I'm not interested in revising at this point to increase density or anything. I think it's been great at 12 units. We've gotten quality projects. We've gotten retail. We've been open to it where we haven't completely shut it out, but we are at almost 35% density in multi-housing in our city. So we just need to be aware. But I think it's kept us at a good threshold. So I'm not interested in revising the general plan at this point. But maybe we just take it case by case. I mean, I know it's hard for you guys because you're the front person they're coming to.
Well, we don't mind it. I just,
It just seems like there's a lot, it sounds like there's a lot coming in.
there's just a huge process that comes with that. And because this property here is a good example, they've approached us 4 or 5 months ago and they said, hey, we need 24 units an acre and what do you think? And we said, look, there's not a zone that can accommodate that. You need to go create the zone. Meanwhile, the developer is saying, well, and we just said, look, go to another city and find a zone that we're not doing it for them, is what I'm saying.
But if
We're
they-
not the ones creating
Yeah.
the zone for them. We do put it back on them in order to do that. Meanwhile, I've got the real estate for the agents for the seller and the buyer that are calling me on a consistent basis saying, why are you holding up the project? And I'm trying to tell them, we're not holding up the project. We need a proposal from you on what density that you want in order to do your project. And they keep saying, well, you're telling us it's going to be 8 months. Well, we're 4 months in and they still have not presented us a proposal. And if they would have done that the first 2 weeks in,
They'd be
then this
moving.
8 months, they'd be halfway through the process. And so we're frustrated on our end too, that we're trying to be accommodating, but yet we feel like increasing frustration. And we want to avoid that the best way possible. Because part of the feedback I need from you is, okay, we are willing to have a discussion more than 12. That's what I'm hearing from you.
For me, it depends on the area.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Now we need to figure out in what circumstances you guys are comfortable with more than 12. So whether that's pieces of property, or whether that is the types of housing, or whatever that's going to be, so that we can either create something that's going to be a mechanism, or if we're comfortable telling people, we'll handle you on a one-off basis, but you need to go create your zone. And by the way, that's going to take at least 8 months, then we can continue to do that.
So are you saying 8 months just because you're just throwing out that number?
Well, no, because that's how long it took us for Larry Myler and for McKay Christensen. We created new zones for them to come, and it takes forever. It just takes a long time. And part of it is slowness on their end, and then, when they present something to us, we now have to go and cross-check that with all the rest of our code, make sure it's kosher with all the other
It's
land
just
use
the
stuff that we
typical
have.
back and forth.
And it does go back and forth. If you remember with Larry Myler, he came in here like 3 times with you guys, and that was after we'd already done the legwork up front. But he changed his approvals, I think, 3 separate times on that piece of property.
But here's the thing, is now we're getting a quality project. So it does take longer, but I think it's a benefit to our citizens that we go through that process. Because I feel with Larry, the first proposal wasn't good. And then by the time we get done, we've gone through the process and it's great.
You're exactly right, Sid, but I think what staff is asking, let's go, is trying to get us to come together that we create a high-density zone that's on the books. Not laid anywhere that they can take off, to shorten that time frame and then have them work from there.
I like
think
that.
that's what is that what we're asking for?
Yeah, and we
Tina,
just,
is
I
that
mean, we need
legal?
to talk, we do need to talk about what that means, because we don't want to create a zone that we feel like we're going to have to tweak to customize to every project. You're going to have to. But we can talk about that as staff and see what our possibilities are.
I think that's the problem, right? The zones that we're discussing that we changed, we wrote them for a specific project with a developer who had a plan, and we basically catered it to their requirements, their needs, and balanced our needs with theirs, right? To come up with something mutually agreeable. I think it's going to be very difficult for us to write a zone that you're not going to have to come in and make individual adjustments for, because like what Scott was saying, every developer is going to come in and have their own constraints, and we're still going to be back to shoehorning their project into our zone or amending the zone to accommodate the project. So let us talk about it as staff, but perhaps we could come up with an idea of, rather than creating a zone, maybe we could come up with some identified areas that the council has indicated they would be interested in
I like that
considering
better.
higher density. And then when the staff gets an application or an inquiry, then those are the areas that we can tell the developer, hey, we've already sort of identified this as something that we're willing to look at depending on the project. Rather than, I'm just afraid that anything we came up with, they're going to want to have us apply it to those areas that you said you weren't interested in applying higher density to. I don't know how we restrict it, and maybe there's a way.
I mean, we can just say no on the rezone, but that's hard.
Yeah, so if you've created the zone and they're asking to apply it to the zone, you're going to have substantial evidence of why you're not going to apply
Yeah.
it. And that puts a burden on us.
Yeah.
That shifts the burden. Instead of having the burden on the developer showing how he complies, the burden shifts to us to say, well, now we don't want it because X, Y, Z. And so I just think there's a better way. Let us put our heads together. I think there's a better way to accommodate what we're trying to do and be for the developers than creating this amorphous zone that has an arbitrary limit on it that may work and may not work, and you're going to be back in the same boat you are right now.
I like that.
I like that.
And you like the idea of us maybe pinpointing some properties that you feel like we
I think
have
with
a
this
little
flexible zone, you're
flexibility
going to be pulling your hair out. You just
Diana?
Just a couple comments. the thing I love about zones is that are firm, is that when a developer comes in, all the surrounding zones have all been considered. So when a developer comes in, he's not so much looking at the value of where he's at, he's looking at his piece. And I think that's the one beautiful thing about the general plan and the zones and the permitted uses of those zones. Now, having said that, I see this brown alleyway in between our city. I don't know if anybody else can see that. We have our residential over here, we have our grove right here, but right smack dab in the middle of it, it's very brown and industrial. Honestly, if a developer came and said that they wanted to green that up and put houses on it, I think I would be very, very interested. And
You're talking about our industrial zone here?
yeah, if a developer came and said that they were going to buy a trailer court and put high density on it, I think we would probably consider it. So I think maybe.
I mean, that's a whole different, in my mind, that's a whole different discussion because there is a purpose for the industrial zone that we
Yeah.
have. And quite honestly,
But I see some of this encroaching on it, and I see some of this encroaching on it, and I think it's time maybe we have a conversation while we're having conversations about zones and density. I think maybe there is this industrial manufacturing zone that maybe we need to look at that is also in the same conversation of would high density work there? That railroad track on State Street is a problem.
yeah.
And it's going to be a problem for any developer that wants to go in there. It has to be a destination. And I don't know if that's I don't know how to get away from that.
You're
by
not.
limiting a developer who wants to come in and develop that. He's already got the biggest obstacle in the city, and that is our commercial street. So I think I would listen to a developer that wanted to come on and develop that piece. And I would be
don't know if we've
interested.
ever had a housing proposal in our industrial zone, have we?
Yeah, we did.
Well, no, our industrial zone. I don't think we've ever had anybody propose that,
Not that of my knowledge, but we have had some from right there, which is
Yeah.
also in the manufacturing one, yeah.
which is BMP.
And across the
isn't it?
street from that, yeah, that one as well. But yeah, nothing yet for that area. And recently that I've known.
Yeah. So, and so that piece up there by State Street, I think I would be very interested in somebody coming in, and I would listen.
Okay, so do we together then, council, on giving the staff direction on,
Yeah, so let me recap.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is your take on what?
My understanding
shot.
is staff is going to go about, and we're going to talk about the best mechanism to accommodate potential projects with density. So we'll talk that through and see what that means. And then probably part of that discussion, I don't know if it will be August 6th or a little bit later, we'll bring back maybe a map and talk about particular pieces of property that the city council would consider for some of these potential changes. So whether it's creating a new zone, whether creating a mechanism that we have a process that we put in place that if somebody wants to develop a tough piece of property with density, that without having a zone, we at least have a process that we can run them through and make sure the expectations are clear. Because again, part of the reason we're talking about potentially creating a zone is it's such a long process if we don't have something already on the books. And that's where, at least with a couple of them, we're getting the rub of, you're kidding me, it's gonna take me 8 months to get an approval on this thing? And it's like, and that's what we're telling them, yes, because we don't
Changing
have
a
a
zone.
zone that can accommodate you. We don't have one on the books.
Is this something that we would want to invite the planning commission to?
I don't know,
Okay.
Greatly appreciate that, yeah, for sure.
I don't know that we have to have the whole
No.
I think you could have the chair and vice chair.
yeah, that's
Okay.
a good idea.
we good what Scott outlined? Thank you. Okay, I think you got your marching orders.
No, I don't have anything else, so I don't know if we want to do a couple of reports.
Well, do you want to, let's go over our tonight's agenda.
Okay, Okay. We have just a plethora of engineering/planning items. This is what happens when we don't have, it's summer building time and we don't have a meeting on July 2nd. So item 9A, B, and C, well, C is going to be continued to August 6th, so we won't be considering that. 9A is a boundary adjustment. We have a couple people that live in our community up on First East, North Canyon Road, that would like to boundary adjust into Cedar Hills. They would like access to sewer. We don't have access, we don't have sewer line up there. Cedar Hills does, and so Cedar Hills requires them to be part of their community in order to have that service, and so they've asked to boundary adjust, and as staff, we're okay with that, and making the recommendation that we do that. But that's what 9A is having that public hearing on that. 9B is a public hearing on the parcel between Stewart's RV and just kind of back behind the BMW, that piece of property there. We've talked about this before. We had to send it back to them to make sure that we got all the parcels needed for this annexation, but that would be annexing into Pleasant Grove City. There's a company that would like to develop and put their offices and manufacturing there. So that would accommodate that. And I'm going over these pretty quick. Daniel's got the whole rundown when he presents that in our meeting. 10A and B are in regards to Utopia. Utopia is the fiber network that's available in some communities in Utah. We've had some businesses that, well, Utopia wants to service some businesses in our community. We've done this in the past, and so we're doing this to accommodate those businesses. But in essence, we're telling Utopia it's okay that you can be in our right-of-way. And in fact, we have some conduit. So 10A is they're going to lease conduit from us. And then 10B is we're going to have a franchise agreement with them that allows them to be in our right-of-way. So I did get an email from somebody today asking if we were putting Utopia in citywide because they saw our agenda. That is not what we're talking about. We're just accommodating a couple businesses in our community. 10C is a two-lot preliminary plat, subdivision plat for Grove Creek Center. So again, this is kind of over by the Horrocks building. There's a vacant lot there owned by Dennis Baker. That is going to be sold and developed to somebody else is going to buy that. And so this is the subdivision plat in order to do that. 10D is an office building on 1972 West Grove Parkway in the Grove Zone, commercial sales, multi-tenant professional office. Is that the eye center, Daniel? So we have a company, they do LASIK surgeries and things like that. They want to develop, and they will have, sounds like multi-tenant, they'll have different tenants in there, but this is their site plan approval so they can get started on that project. Item E is some infill development kind of over by the mayor's house, a 4-lot subdivision in order to accommodate the development of that property. Item F and G are related. One is the plat and the other is the site plan approval. This is the property that is just to the west of the Walmart neighborhood market and Jimmy John's and that area there. It's a kind of a funny strip of property there, but they've been grubbing that out for the last year or so, and now they're ready to put some buildings in there. So a condominium subdivision plat in order to create a business park there. So that's item F and G. And then H, final subdivision plat of Valley Grove business. So H and I are related. This is a project with St. John Properties. They'd like to do another 5-story office building. So they need to amend their plat, and then they're looking for site plan approval. If Daniel's here or Mark is here, they can kind of talk about the timeline of when they would see that developed. J is 3-lot commercial subdivision plat, Grove Commons on West State Street in the Grove Zone. This is, okay, this is kind of over by the other one, but this is behind, when I say behind, to the south of the Jimmy John's and the Domino's Pizza there. There's a dentist's office, and then there's an empty lot there, and they're going to develop that and put in some more.
That one will be continued, though.
Okay, that one's going to be continued. So there you go. You have a sneak preview for our August 6th meeting. K is reimbursement agreements on 1100 North. We're redoing the water line and the road there. You're familiar with that project. We do have 5 property owners that are going to get new curb gutter sidewalk, and so they're going to reimburse us over time on the cost of that. Item L is surplus items from the fire department, a couple iPhones and a Surface Pro that we need to declare surplus. And then item M is policy changes that Kyler and Tina have been working on regarding leaves of absence and reimbursable expenses, and they'll get into the details of that. So, and then we will have a brief RDA meeting to approve our minutes from the last time we met when we approved the budget. So there's your brief overview. Is there any, if you have questions, you're going to get more information when we get in city council meeting, but if you have anything that you have off the top of your head, okay, do it. So that's all we have, Mayor, for work session.
Okay. Any other, got anything for work session, or should we adjourn? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn from our work session.
I make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We'll be adjourned, and we'll be back in here before 6 o'clock.